Hello, everybody. Michael Tracey here. So, one of the themes of today's hearing in the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence was this notion of an unwitting agent. Now, if you remember, the term unwitting agent came into popular parlance a number of months ago now, last August, when Mike Morrell, who is the former CIA director, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times in which he alleged that Trump is an unwitting agent of the Russian Federation. Um, that caused some shockwaves at the time because it sort of crystallized a narrative that had been congealing, let's say. Um, and ever since, the notion of an unwitting agent has been invoked by mostly Democrats and some Republicans to describe people who, over the course of their advocacy or journalism or commentary or other actions, end up doing the bidding or doing what would be viewed as favorable by the Russian government. So, this term was used again today at the Select Committee hearing, and it was invoked in pretty stark terms by Thomas Rid, who was one of the witnesses testifying at the committee. And he said that among Russia's present day, quote, unwitting agents are WikiLeaks, not terribly surprising, Twitter, the company Twitter, and, quote, overeager journalists. So, think about that. According to Thomas Rid, who has been given a platform at this high-profile Senate hearing, and whose admonitions all were received with solemn nods of approval by senators on the committee, Thomas Rid believes that, quote, overeager journalists should all be considered, quote, unwitting agents of Russia. So let's try to think of who that might encompass. So let's say there is somebody who uncovers corruption, let's say, in NATO. Who knows exactly what this might be? Let's say misallocation of funds. In reporting that story, the journalist who had broken the story would, in a sense, be doing the bidding of Russia because, at least it's the popular conception, is that Russia seeks to undermine and delegitimize the NATO alliance. So would it be correct or fair-minded or even ethical to declare that journalist an unwitting agent of Russia simply because his work had resulted in giving credence to a narrative that Russian state actors seek to advance? That seems self-evidently absurd, right? I think Thomas Rid was referring to journalists over the course of the 2016 election who reported on the newsworthy tidbits that came out of the WikiLeaks release. Because, in doing so, journalists gave credence to what Rid and others are declaring this disinformation campaign by using that information to inform their reporting, which reflected poorly on the Hillary Clinton campaign and other prominent Democrats. So was anybody, including me, including any journalist under the sun, anybody who reported on the newsworthy tidbits in the WikiLeaks emails, meaning the Podesta emails or the DNC emails, we're all over-eager journalists who are unwitting agents of the Russian Federation? I mean, the absurdity of this should be pretty self-evident, but what's the function of this? The function of this is to tie people who have no necessary connection to Russia whatsoever to Russia by association. And the association is incredibly flimsy because you don't even have to be a witting associate of Russia. You don't have to even actively seek to collude with any kind of Russian government interest. Nevertheless, you, according to Reid and according to senators and many Democrats, you are an unwitting agent of the Russian Federation if you simply report on stories which may, in some tangential sense, advance Russian interests or bolster narratives favored by the Russian government. So, I mean, the idiocy of this should just be is on full display here. I think to anybody who has even a lick of common sense. But what's so pernicious is now this idea is rapidly entering the mainstream. I've been personally accused of being a Russian agent or compromised by Russia on countless occasions, but it seems to have been picking up lately. And you're seeing that narrative gain additional steam. So other highlights from the meeting, which I think also are of concern, is here's a quote from Dianne Feinstein, the longtime senator from California. She admitted that the Russia issue is, quote, eclipsing everything else in my mind, meaning in her mind. So she's saying that the Russian issue is now of such urgent importance and of such massive significance that it's eclipsing everything else in her mind. So she can't focus on anything else because the weight of this Russia issue, is so heavy on her waking consciousness. So she's admitting a fixation. She's admitting something of a derangement. I actually appreciate the honesty there. Oh, it's unbelievable. The unwitting agent thing is just insidious beyond belief because it is completely evocative of McCarthyism. So what's going on now has been called Neo-McCarthyism, right? Because it's obviously in a different context. The political circumstances are much different. The threat is not communist, purportedly. But what people who have coined that term and used it have always said is the similar tropes or similar mechanisms are now being employed to further Neo-McCarthyism as were employed during the heyday of McCarthyism. And one of those methods is to impute motivations to people or assert ties that people have when they really don't have them. You're just declaring guilt by association. And the association doesn't even have to exist. So you're using a guilt by association tactic to discredit somebody who happens to advance a position that can in some sense be perceived as favorable to Russia. That person is now an unwitting agent of Russia, and they've done nothing to establish the association. They've just been assigned the association. So there's nothing you can do to disprove it because the criteria is so vague. It doesn't even have to be witting association anymore. It could just be, oh my God, this happened and I had no control over it. So think about it this way. If a Russian government actor accused a Russian journalist of being an unwitting agent of the United States because, say, they reported on a corrupt activity within the Russian military, or they reported on some kind of, scandalous behavior that was going on in the Russian intelligence services, Russian government could say, hey, your journalism here is functionally advancing a narrative favored by the United States, so therefore you're an unwitting agent of the United States government. And, by this logic, per the assumptions that are implicit in this logical formulation, that would be absolutely correct. And we couldn't say that there's anything wrong with that because that's the narrative that we're stoking here. So, it's really troubling, and it's just utterly fallacious. I mean, if somebody is an agent of Russia, accuse them of being an agent of Russia if you have actual reason to believe that they're working in concert with Russian forces. Not just because you have this vague sense that they might be, in league with the Russian point of view, whatever that means. So that was what today's big narrative was. I'm sure there will be more along these lines going forward. People should be prepared for it. Be prepared to field accusations that you are an unwitting agent, because that term is now gaining currency, and it will probably be used pretty widely. There's more to say about this hearing, but I wanted to just focus for now on the unwitting agent story, or trope, or whatever. Anyway, have a great evening, and I will see you all later.